You wouldn't believe how many times I have seen projects that were heading for a successful delivery. Everything on track, teams excited, deadlines within reach suddenly hit a wall because of a security and compliance report. 1 week before go live, the report comes in and boom, tons of issues, vulnerabilities, and compliance problems that nobody saw coming. It's a nightmare, and it can delay a project by weeks or even months. The worst part of it, it's totally avoidable if you start thinking about security and compliance from day one. That's why today I'm going to show you how to avoid these last-minute surprises using CDK-Nag. With CDK-Nag, you can automatically check your AWS infrastructure for security and compliance issues before they become a problem. So, what's exactly CDK-Nag? It's a powerful plugin for AWS CDK that scans your infrastructure code and it checks it against industry best practices, AWS security guidelines, and compliance standards. Basically, it's like having a security expert built right into your infrastructure code. CDK-Nag runs a set of rules on your resources and flags issues that could cause major headaches later on. For example, it can catch things like S3 bucket with public access. You don't want your sensitive data to be exposed to the world, right? CDK-Nag will make sure all your buckets are private or at least encrypted. Unencrypted EBS volumes. Storing sensitive data on unencrypted volumes, CDK-Nag will alert you to make sure everything is locked down and encrypted. IAM rules with overly permission policies. CDK-Nag can flag roles that grant too much access, ensuring that your roles follow the principles of least privilege. Missing logging or monitoring on critical resources. Without proper logging, how will you detect or investigate security incidents? CDK-Nag helps you make sure you have logs enabled where they matter most. And those are just a few examples. CDK-Nag can also help with compliance frameworks like PCI DSS, HIPAA, and CIS benchmarks. Essentially, ensure that your infrastructure meets the standards required by industries that care about security. With CDK-Nag, you can catch these issues before your infrastructure goes live, saving you time, stress, and those last-minute delays we talked about earlier.
So now let's straight away jump to coding and see how powerful is CDK-Nag in mitigating or in preventing security and compliance issues from reaching your AWS environment and from affecting the security of your system. So let's quickly reiterate the definition of CDK-Nag and understand how it works with AWS CDK to prevent the security and compliance issues. CDK-Nag is basically an open source library. You can install it in your CDK pipeline and use it as part of your code base, and basically it will prevent the CDK thin step from happening, or it will show the issues in your console when you run the CDK thins before running your CDK deploy. Before starting with CDK-Nag, we need to understand a very important concept of AWS CDK, which is aspects. Aspects are a feature in AWS CDK that enable you to inspect or modify all the resources in a stack during the synthesis phase, which is before the CloudFormation template is generated. This means you can apply certain rules or policies or validations globally to any resource type, such as S3 buckets, Lambda function, DynamoDB. Any resource, you can apply some rules or validations in the aspects. That's why aspects a very great tool that we can use it to apply the compliance and security checks, which included in CDK-Nag. Looking at the code at front of you now, we have a very basic S3 bucket, which is basically a website definition or a public website definition. And we need to check if this violates any security or compliance rule or not. All what we need to do here actually is installing the CDK-Nag and write a line of the aspects that will include checking the AWS solution checks that's part of CDK-Nag. Before writing this line, you need to install CDK-Nag library. If you haven't installed it yet, just write npm install CDK-Nag. Once it's installed, you will find these libraries available to you, so you can use them in addition to the aspects to check for security or compliance issues. So to test our code here or the compliance of this S3 bucket, all you need to do is write the normal CDK thins command. And as you can see, there is a tons of errors because this S3 actually is a public website and it's intentionally available to public access, but because we are checking against some predefined rules by CDK-Nag, now we see these errors. Some of them are expected or we need to fix them, but some of them we need to actually suppress them. Let's check. For example, this bucket has server access logs disabled. The S3 bucket does not have public access restricted. This one will be suppressed. This one should be fixed. As you can see here, these security checks are done for us in the background by the rules defined in the CDK-Nag library and the usage of the aspects feature of CDK. So for the sake of this demo, we don't need actually to fix any of these issues. So now let's ignore these errors by using the suppress features of CDK-Nag. Here is an example code line that will allow us to suppress or ignore an error. So we need to use this, the bucket name, and as you can see, here is the ID of the error that we need to suppress and the reason, because it's gonna be written in the CDK sense report. So we need to write why we suppress this error. So when security team see our report, they can understand why we don't use any of their rules or we ignore one of the rules that's defined here. That's S1. Let's run and see if S1 is already ignored or not. As you can see, S1 is now ignored. We can repeat this step for all other errors. So now we have achieved two very important things. First one, security and compliance check of the code by writing one line. The other thing that we achieved now is ignoring some errors, which, for example, for the public website, it makes sense for S3 to be accessible to the public internet.
So let's talk about taking CDK-Nag to the next level. One of the most powerful features of CDK-Nag is its flexibility. You are not stuck with just the default rules. Both your development team and your security team can sit together early in the project and customize the rules that they apply to your infrastructure. Think about it. Instead of having the dev team code away and then the security team showing up late in the game with a long list of issues, they can collaborate from day one. By integrating CDK-Nag, both teams can agree on the security and compliance rules that need to be enforced right from the start. With this kind of setup, both teams are on the same page. The development team can focus on building features knowing that security checks are automatically backed into the infrastructure, and the security team, well, they get peace of mind knowing that critical security issues are being handled upfront. And this isn't just about catching issues, it's about bringing dev and security teams together. By using CDK-Nag, these two critical parts of the project can collaborate more efficiently early in the project lifecycle, rather than dealing with cost delays or rework later on. This is the beauty of shift lifting in security catching and addressing issues as early as possible while also fostering better communication between teams.
What we need to cover as well in this demo is the availability of predefined rules for PCI checks, for example, or any standard compliance or security rules. So we can use it out of the shelf from CDK-Nag. No need to write them all again because they are defined for us. And we can agree with the security team on which rules of the rules available in CDK-Nag to apply. And we even can customize them. An example of this standard of security is NIST 800, which one of the predefined checks that already exist in CDK-Nag. We have PCI DSS, we have all other security standards already in the library. and it's as easy as we used the aspects for the AWS solution checks. A line like this one should do the job, and this library is part of CDK-Nag. So let's include it here in the import, and that should be all. I'm not sure if there is any violation against these standards, but let's just for the sake of curiosity run this line. Yes, we have set of, oh, that's much. We have many errors that we need to either mitigate or ignore so that our command can run properly. It's out of the scope of this video to cover all these errors, but as you can see, you can follow these standards to make sure if it's required for your application, or if it's required by your security team, just include it here and fix these errors before you get the report from the security team later on at very late stage of your project. One last thing I need to cover in our demo is integrating the CDK-Nag with the unit tests. So even without running the CDK things, we can add these rules in the aspects, and later in the unit test we can make use of the outcome of this and make sure nothing violates our assumptions. For unit tests of CDK, it's generally available by using the unit testing tool. It's a very famous tool for testing TypeScript code, and an example of tests is already here. So it's a standard unit tests written here. Initialize a stack, use the aspects, and this test, for example, make sure that we are not suppressing any errors. This is not very suitable for our case of public website because we are going to suppress, but this is suitable for other cases. But for the sake of this demo, let's run the tests here, test, and see the outcome of the test. As you can see, we have one failed and one passed. The failed will be basically because we assume that we shouldn't have any suppressed errors in this line, the length 0, but of course the errors is suppressed. We know that we suppress AWS solutions S1, so that's expected. We need to adjust our unit tests to match the public website, but this is out of the scope of this demo. We here validate that we can add the security and compliance and checks to our code, and we can even validate them in the unit tests. Again, this is not something that you have the right or wrong things defined. You have to sit with your security team and agree on all the security rules that you need to include in your checks.
Alright, to wrap up things, CDK-Nag is your secret weapon for catching security and compliance issues before they cause delays. It's easy to integrate, and it helps your dev and security team work together from the start. By bringing security in the conversation early, you are not just preventing issues, you are setting your project up for smoother and faster deliveries. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any future content. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.